Hi, it's a pleasure to have you here. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. My name is Emily, I'm 35 years old. And until a few weeks ago, I truly believed I was living a strong, mature marriage built on love and trust. For 7 years, Michael was my safe place, my partner in everything. The man I believed was the love of my life. We lived in a spacious house in Austin, with big windows and a kitchen where we'd cook together on quiet Friday nights. I admired him, respected him, and never, not even once, suspected that the heart beating beside mine was hiding another life. But everything changed, and the perfect world I thought I had began to collapse in the most silent, cruel way. Sarah was more than a best friend. She was like a sister. We met in high school, survived heartbreaks together, celebrated college graduations, and stood by each other at our weddings. She knew all my secrets, my dreams, my insecurities, and I thought I knew hers too. I trusted her with my life, and when she cried on my shoulder or laughed over wine in my kitchen, it felt like home. There was never a single moment I doubted her loyalty, until the day everything fell apart. Michael and I had a rhythm with Sarah and her husband David: game nights, weekend getaways, lazy Sunday brunches. We were the kind of double-date couple people envied. Inside jokes, matching vacation shirts, years of memories built together. The four of us had photos on beaches, around fire pits, raising glasses at birthdays. I thought we were unshakable, a little family by choice. But while I saw connection and comfort, something else had been happening behind my back. Sarah was at our house so often she had her own coffee mug in the cabinet. Sometimes she'd drop by unannounced, bringing pastries or wine, laughing like she belonged there, and I welcomed it. Michael never seemed bothered. In fact, they got along so well I felt lucky they were close. I never once questioned how long she stayed after I went to bed, or how her hand would linger just a little too long on his shoulder. My blindness wasn't naivete, it was faith in the wrong people. One ordinary morning, as sunlight poured into the kitchen and Michael hummed in the shower, his phone buzzed on the counter. I was making coffee, half asleep, not thinking much, until the screen lit up with her name. It wasn't unusual. They messaged sometimes about plans or surprises for David, but something in my stomach twisted when I saw the preview. Just 4 words, but they hit like a knife. I miss you, love. I froze. My hands were wet from washing a mug, and my heart had already started racing, thudding in my ears like a warning siren. I told myself not to overreact. Maybe it was a joke, maybe there was a context I didn't understand, but something deep inside me whispered that everything was about to change. And with a shaking breath, I picked up the phone and unlocked it. The full message was worse than I imagined. I miss you, love. I can still feel your hands on me. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe, my fingers trembling as I scrolled up. There were dozens of messages, some from her, some from him, late-night confessions, flirty emojis, secrets not meant for my eyes. My vision blurred as I realized this wasn't a moment of weakness. This was an affair. Message after message confirmed it all. The pet names, the longing, the plans to meet without anyone knowing. He called her baby, told her he missed her smell, her taste. She said she couldn't stop thinking about the last time, how she dreamed of him even while lying beside her husband. The betrayal was so raw, so intimate, it felt like a blade dragging slowly through my chest. And all I could do was stand there, shattered, reading the proof that my life had been a lie. My knees buckled. I had to grip the edge of the counter just to stay upright, the room spinning around me as if gravity itself had turned cruel. My stomach twisted in knots, and for a second I thought I might vomit. 7 years of love, laughter, shared memories, all reduced to ashes by the people I trusted most. I wanted to scream, to break every dish in the kitchen, to wake him up and confront him, but I didn't do any of that. I closed the messages, placed the phone back exactly where it had been, and stood still. My heart was pounding, my breath shallow, but I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even let a tear fall. I stared out the window at the calm street, at the leaves swaying gently, and decided in that moment I would not fall apart. I would think. I would plan. That night, I lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling while he snored softly, unaware that I had seen everything. I didn't touch him. I didn't speak. I just replayed every word they had written to each other, every lie, every betrayal. I knew I couldn't confront them, not yet. If I wanted justice, it had to be smart, cold, and quiet. The next day, while pretending everything was normal, I opened Sarah's WhatsApp profile and saw the photo. Her and David, arms wrapped around each other, smiling like the perfect couple. That image was the key. It was the same one Michael had saved in his contacts for Sarah. Same pose, same lighting, same damn smile. That's when the idea began to form. If I played this right, I could make them both bleed without lifting a finger. The photo wasn't just similar, it was identical. They had both set it as their display picture, and neither had changed it in months. I zoomed in, checked the angle, the background, even the reflection in Sarah's sunglasses. Everything matched. If I switched their numbers in Michael's phone, he wouldn't notice a thing. It would be his own carelessness that brought him down. I paced the kitchen later that evening, heart pounding, mind racing. This wasn't just revenge. It was a trap they would walk into willingly. No yelling. No drama. Just the pure, quiet horror of being exposed. And I knew deep in my gut that I was going to do it. Michael fell asleep with the TV on, one arm draped over me like nothing was wrong. I waited until his breathing deepened, slow and steady, and gently slid out from under him. Every step felt like walking a tightrope. Quiet, careful, controlled. I went into the bathroom with his phone in my hand, locked the door, and sat on the cold tile floor. This was the moment everything would begin. I stared at the screen for a long time, my hands cold and slightly shaking. I had never done anything like this, never even thought of snooping through his life before. But now I had his phone unlocked, my heart beating hard in my chest, and a plan that demanded execution. I opened his contacts, searched for Sarah and David, and held my breath. This was it. With careful, precise movements, I switched their phone numbers. Sarah's name now had David's number, and David's name had hers. The photos remained the same. The names didn't change. Everything looked untouched. But now, every sweet nothing Michael sent to Sarah would go to her husband instead. I walked back into the bedroom, phone in hand, and placed it exactly where it had been on the nightstand. Michael was still asleep, unaware of the ticking bomb I just planted in our lives. I slid under the blanket, turned off the TV, and laid next to him with a calm face and a storm in my chest. If he touched me, I didn't move. I just stared at the dark ceiling and waited. The sun rose like any other day, and I got up before him, humming softly as if nothing had changed. I brewed his favorite coffee, made eggs just the way he liked, and kissed his cheek when he walked into the kitchen. He smiled, clueless, and I smiled back with a warmth I didn't feel. I had never acted so well in my life. We talked about errands and weekend plans, the weather and traffic, as if the world hadn't shattered just 2 days earlier. I watched him check his phone and smirk slightly, and I knew he was texting her. But this time I wasn't the fool. I cleaned the counter, folded laundry, played the part of the devoted wife, and waited for the silence to detonate. When Michael went to shower again, just like the day before, I felt my pulse spike. I waited until the water was running, then grabbed his phone from the nightstand and opened the messages. My hands were steady this time. Not because I wasn't scared, but because I was in control now. I scrolled to his last conversation with Sarah. He had already texted her that morning. There they were, fresh photos, still warm with intention, a shirtless selfie from our bedroom, a close-up of his lips, and a message that read, "Wish you were here, babe." I stared at them, both disgusted and electrified. He had no idea they had gone to David. No idea that every word he typed was setting the house of lies on fire. It was working, and it was only the beginning. The texts grew more graphic, bold lines dripping with lust and filth, things he had never once said to me. I dreamed about your body all night, he wrote. I still taste you. It made my stomach churn, not from jealousy, but from the sheer disrespect, the dirtiness of it all. But I didn't cry, not anymore. Every filthy message was one more nail in his own coffin. What he didn't know, what made this so perfect, was that all of those words, all of those images were landing in David's phone, not Sarah's. I imagined him reading them, jaw tightening, eyes burning, breath caught between rage and disbelief. David, the quiet, loyal man who once toasted to our anniversaries, was now reading the proof of betrayal firsthand. I didn't need to say a word. The truth was already moving. I locked the phone, placed it back, and walked out to water the plants with a steady smile. But inside, adrenaline pulsed like a drug. My body tensed with anticipation. This wasn't guilt, this was strategy. I knew something was coming, and it would be loud, violent, final. The silence before that storm felt almost sacred. I kept my routine as usual. Calls, emails, errands, a friendly chat with the neighbor. But under the surface, my entire body was bracing for impact. Every text I sent, every sip of coffee was drenched in tension. I didn't know when it would happen, an hour, a day, maybe even a week. But it was coming, and when it did, I would be ready. Late that afternoon, clouds rolled in, heavy and gray, casting long shadows across the living room. I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. Once sharp and urgent. I froze for half a second, then calmly set the shirt down and walked to the door. Through the glass, I saw him. David standing there, fists clenched, face red with fury. The storm had arrived. He didn't wait for an invitation. As soon as I opened the door, he pushed past me, breathing hard, eyes wild, looking for Michael like a predator tracking prey. "Where is he?" he barked. I said nothing. I didn't need to. His steps thundered down the hallway toward our bedroom, where Michael was napping, still wrapped in the comfort of his lies. That comfort was about to end. Michael sat up, groggy and confused, just in time to see David burst through the door. "What the hell is going on?" he asked, but it was too late. David's fist was already in motion, and rage filled the air like electricity before lightning. I watched from the doorway, my heart cold, my face still. I had imagined this moment 100 times. Now I was living it. David grabbed Michael by the collar, dragged him out of bed, and slammed him against the dresser. "You think I'm stupid? You think I wouldn't find out?" he screamed, his voice shaking with betrayal. Michael tried to deny it, tried to push back, but the messages had done all the talking. "You sent me pictures, man. You called me baby. You said you missed tasting me." That's when Michael froze. He finally understood. Michael shoved David back, but he wasn't fast enough. David's punch landed hard, straight to his jaw, knocking him against the closet door. I heard the crack of wood and a grunt of pain as Michael fell, stunned. David stood over him, fists clenched, chest heaving, ready to strike again. I didn't move. I didn't scream. This was their chaos, and I was only watching it unfold. "You're a liar. A pig. A piece of garbage." David spat, his voice raw and shaking with rage. Michael struggled to stand, holding his face, but he had no defense, no dignity left. "You smiled at me, ate dinner in my home, while you were screwing my wife behind my back." The words cut deeper than the punch had. Every syllable was soaked in betrayal. Then David turned to me, his voice full of acid. "And your best friend? She's a slut. A manipulative, disgusting whore." He didn't shout it. He said it like a final judgment, a truth dragged into the light. For a second, I saw something break behind his eyes. Not just anger, but deep, soul-wrenching disappointment. He wasn't just furious. He was heartbroken. And so was I. Still breathing heavily, David looked back at Michael and said, "You didn't send those messages to her. You sent them to me." Silence fell, thick and electric. Michael's mouth opened slightly, stunned, confused, as if his brain was scrambling to make sense of it. I saw everything. Every photo. Every word. David continued, his voice cold now. You thought you were clever, but someone was smarter. I stepped forward then, my voice calm, steady. It was me, I said. I switched the contacts. David turned to me, his jaw tight, processing what I just confessed. Michael looked like he'd been slapped again, eyes wide, mouth hanging open, completely speechless. You betrayed me, I added, looking directly at him. So I let your lies destroy themselves. Michael's face crumpled in disbelief. You what? You did this, he stammered, as if somehow I was the villain. But I just stared at him, not flinching. David looked at me, something changing in his eyes. Not anger, but a kind of stunned respect. Michael looked between us, like he was realizing he had no allies left. Just the consequences he never thought he'd face. He tried to speak, to explain, but there was nothing he could say that wouldn't make him smaller. Every excuse he might have used was already exposed, meaningless. He sat back on the bed, head in his hands, defeated. The man who once seemed so in control, so confident, was now a broken shell. And I felt nothing for him, not pity, not rage. Just closure. I picked up my purse, walked to the doorway, and said the words without even looking back. It's over, Michael. I want a divorce. He didn't answer. He couldn't. I walked past David, who gave a slow nod, and out into the fading light of the afternoon. The weight on my chest had lifted. The decision was final. The next morning, I went to the courthouse alone, filled out the papers, and filed for divorce. No hesitation. No second thoughts. I didn't care about alimony or who kept the furniture. I just wanted to erase his name from my life. By noon, the process had begun, and with it, my healing. I returned to the house only once more to pack my things. I moved quickly, methodically, folding what mattered, trashing what didn't. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Not because I thought he deserved a message, but because I didn't want it touching me anymore. As I walked out of that house in Austin, I didn't cry. I just drove away. I never spoke to Sarah again. She texted, called, even sent a long, desperate email trying to explain, but I didn't open it. There was no apology that could fix what she had done. Not just to me, but to our years of friendship, to the trust one had placed in her without question. She was dead to me the moment I saw her name on his screen. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. David didn't waste time either. He filed for divorce the same week I did, cutting her out of his life with the same brutal clarity she'd once used to sneak around behind his back. Sarah moved out of their house quietly, avoiding neighbors, ashamed. David never mentioned her again, not to me or anyone else we knew. Just like that, their so-called perfect marriage was gone. Word spread fast. Austin isn't as big as it pretends to be. Friends pulled away from her, invites stopped, her social media turned quiet. She tried to act like nothing had happened, posting smiling selfies and vague quotes about growth. But no one was buying it. People weren't angry. They were disgusted. She had destroyed 2 lives for something that wasn't even real. Eventually, I heard through a mutual friend that Michael and Sarah had moved in together. No ceremony, no celebration. Just 2 broken people clinging to what was left of their mess. They were seen grocery shopping once, looking tense, uncomfortable, like strangers trying to pretend they had something in common. They got what they wanted, but nothing about it looked like love. They tried to build a life on lies, and unsurprisingly, it didn't last. Fights started in public, neighbors overheard shouting, and Michael was seen leaving the apartment at night alone more than once. Sarah looked thinner, tired, haunted by what she'd lost. The chemistry they thought they had couldn't survive reality. What felt like passion was just guilt in disguise. 2 months later, Sarah caught Michael cheating with someone younger, someone new. He didn't even try to hide it. Just like he'd done to me, he did to her, repeating the cycle without blinking. She begged him to stay, cried in the parking lot of his work, but he walked right past her. For the first time, she felt what I had felt. And I didn't feel sorry. Sarah stopped showing up online. Her bright, filtered life faded into silence, and her friends confirmed she was barely leaving the apartment. Betrayal had finally touched her skin, sharp, raw, cold. I imagined her sitting in the dark, reading old messages, wondering when it all turned against her. She had broken me once. Now she was broken the same way. Michael didn't fare much better. After I left, bills piled up, and the illusion of stability crumbled fast. He wasn't good with money. I had always been the one holding things together. With the affair exposed and his image ruined, his professional life began to spiral. Clients stopped calling. Respect disappeared. He had lost more than a wife. He had lost everything. When real life started closing in, he turned to drinking. Quietly at first, a bottle here, a night out there. But soon it became obvious. Missed meetings, slurred voicemails, forgotten commitments. The charming, confident man I once knew was gone, replaced by someone bitter and broken. He wasn't escaping pain. He was drowning in it. Within a year, Michael had become unrecognizable. The man who once hosted elegant dinners was now borrowing money from old friends, avoiding eye contact in public, wearing the same clothes for days. He wasn't a husband, a lover, or even a friend anymore. He was a warning. People whispered about him behind closed doors, and I never looked back. I moved to Seattle with nothing but 2 suitcases and a heart determined to start over. The air felt different there, cleaner, colder, honest. I found a small apartment near the water, started working again, and little by little, I began breathing like myself. No one knew my story. No one looked at me with pity. I was free for the first time in years. 2 years passed like waves, some soft, some crashing. There were nights I couldn't sleep and mornings I didn't want to get up, but slowly pain became memory instead of presence. I learned how to be alone without being lonely. I smiled at strangers, danced in my kitchen again, found joy in little routines. The scar was there, but it no longer bled. One rainy afternoon, I walked into a quiet cafe downtown, just looking for warmth. And there he was, David, sitting by the window reading, the same calm expression I remembered. Our eyes met, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, not awkward, not forced, just real. And I walked over, heart steady. We sat for over an hour, talking like 2 people who had lived through fire and come out with new skin. No blame, no bitterness, just truth. He told me about his move, his work, his therapy, his quiet search for peace. I told him about the ocean walks, the silence I'd grown to love. We were older now, not in age but in understanding. At one point, I said something about Michael's terrible cooking, and David laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. We both laughed then, not just at the memory, but at how far we'd come from it. It felt good to laugh with someone who had felt the same pain. It wasn't about mocking the past. It was about surviving it together. There was a pause in the conversation, not awkward but electric. He looked at me the way he used to look at Sarah, but gentler, deeper. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear but with hope. Something had shifted, quietly but surely. And when he asked if I wanted to see him again, I didn't hesitate. We met again the next weekend, walking by the water, no plans, no pressure. It wasn't about romance, not yet. It was about trust. About being seen and not having to pretend. By the end of the night, I realized I was smiling differently. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was beginning again. It was slow. It was careful. And it was real. We built something honest. From coffee dates to road trips. From rainy mornings to quiet nights in. David never rushed me. Never flinched when I told him the ugly parts. He didn't promise to fix anything. He just stayed. And for the first time, love didn't hurt. 3 months later, he asked me to marry him. No big gesture, no cameras. Just him in the kitchen with a simple ring and eyes that told the truth. I said yes without fear, without doubt. Because this time I knew what love looked like. And it looked like him. We got married on a foggy morning by the sea. Just the 2 of us, no guests, no drama. No one to impress. No past haunting the moment. Just vows whispered with tears in our eyes, hands clasped tightly, the world falling away around us. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was real. David gives me something I never had before. Not just love, but peace. There's no guessing, no doubt, no hiding. We talk about everything, even the past, but never as victims, only as people who survived. Our home is quiet, full of books and music and small, beautiful moments. Every day with him feels earned, like a reward for all the pain we endured. Sometimes I hear things that Michael's been in and out of jobs, that Sarah moved back with her parents, that their lives never really recovered. I don't celebrate their misery, but I don't grieve it either. They built their future on betrayal, and it collapsed exactly as it should. Meanwhile, I travel the world with a man who loves me deeply and honestly. That's not revenge. That's balance. I never saw Michael or Sarah again, and I never needed to. I didn't chase apologies, didn't stalk their lives online, didn't let their names take space in my mind. Letting go was a choice, not because they deserved peace, but because I did. Their silence was the final chapter, and mine was the beginning of a new book. There were nights I doubted myself, thinking maybe I had been too cold, too strategic, too ruthless. But every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who refused to be a victim. I didn't just survive betrayal. I turned it into something sharp, something that cut through the lies and left me free. I'm proud of that version of me. She saved my life. Before David, I thought love meant giving until you had nothing left. Now I know it means choosing someone who never makes you doubt your worth. We don't complete each other, we complement each other. He loves my strength, not my silence. And I love his patience, not his promises. That's what makes it real. There are things betrayal teaches you that nothing else can. How to protect your own heart, how to recognize dishonesty behind a smile, how to walk away when everything in you wants to stay. I don't regret what happened. I regret who I trusted, but I'm grateful for what it showed me. Some lessons cost everything, and they're still worth it. Someday, if I have a daughter, I'll tell her this story, not to scare her, but to remind her that losing everything is sometimes how you find yourself. I'll teach her that silence can be powerful, that clarity can be a weapon, and that walking away is not weakness. I'll teach her to never beg for love, only to accept it when it's real. The most dangerous thing I ever did wasn't screaming or throwing his phone or breaking dishes. It was staying quiet, watching, thinking, waiting, letting the truth speak louder than revenge ever could. I used to think silence meant defeat. Now I know it can be the loudest scream in the room. Sometimes, in the quiet of the morning, I think back to that house in Austin. The kitchen, the coffee, the phone buzzing. Feels like another lifetime. That version of me died in that moment. And the woman who was born, she doesn't chase ghosts. She builds peace. And she never ever ignores her instincts again. I didn't get the ending I once imagined. No big house, no anniversary parties, no white picket fence. I got something better. A love that doesn't hurt, a life that's honest, a heart that's finally mine. Not every story ends the way you plan, but sometimes it ends exactly how it needs to. And that's enough. I no longer measure time in anniversaries or milestones. I measure it in peace, in mornings without dread, in nights without waiting for a phone to buzz. There's a quiet kind of happiness that grows from surviving devastation, the kind you don't post about, the kind that lives in your bones. It's not flashy or loud. It's steady. It's mine. I still keep a photo from my old life. Not of Michael or Sarah, but of myself smiling on a beach, not knowing what was coming. I keep it to remind myself of the woman I used to be. Trusting, open, blind. Not to mourn her, but to honor her. She had to be broken for me to become this version of myself. Sometimes David catches me staring out the window in silence. He never asks what I'm thinking. He just walks over, wraps his arms around me, and lets me exist in whatever moment I'm in. That, I've learned, is love, not needing to be anything but present. Not fixing. Just holding space. We don't talk about our past often. Not because we avoid it, but because it doesn't define us anymore. It's like a scar we both share, one that itches in the rain but no longer bleeds. Every now and then, one of us will say something and we'll nod, and then we'll move on. That's the power of healing together. I never thought I'd fall in love again. I thought trust was something I'd buried along with the woman who believed Michael would never lie. But David proved me wrong by never asking me to prove anything. He just stayed consistent, gentle, kind. And over time, my walls stopped being necessary. There's a difference between starting over and starting fresh. Starting over feels like erasing. Starting fresh feels like planting. I didn't erase my past. I planted something better on top of it. And every day it blooms a little more. Some days wildly, some days quietly, but always with purpose. I sometimes get asked if I've forgiven them, Michael and Sarah. The truth is, I don't know if that matters anymore. Forgiveness isn't a doorway they get to walk through. It's a door I closed behind me when I chose to live without them. Whether they feel remorse or not is no longer my concern. When I look at my life now, it doesn't feel like a second chance. Feels like my first real one. Not a continuation of what was, but a chapter that starts with a whole new tone. No secrets. No roles to perform. Just breath, truth, and love that never makes me question my own worth. If I could go back and talk to the woman I was on the morning she saw that text message, I wouldn't warn her. I wouldn't stop her from reading it. I'd just hold her face in my hands and whisper, "You're going to be okay. And one day you'll be more than okay. You'll be free." That's what no one tells you about betrayal. That it breaks more than your heart. Breaks your identity. Your sense of direction. But sometimes that's what you need to rebuild something unshakable. Not the life you planned. The life you deserved. I learned that walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's bravery. It's knowing that staying would have meant shrinking. And I was never meant to live small. I was meant to outgrow what tried to destroy me. And I did beautifully. Now, when I lie next to David and listen to the sound of rain against the window, I don't flinch. I don't wait for pain. I let the peace wash over me like a promise kept. This is my life now, not perfect but mine. And that is everything. There are no more passwords to guess. No more glances over shoulders, no more pretending. Just laughter in the kitchen, music while we cook, soft conversations in the dark. The little things. The honest things. The things that matter. I once thought survival meant standing tall after the storm, but now I know true survival is planting flowers in the rubble. It's rebuilding without bitterness, loving again without fear, and smiling not because the past didn't hurt, but because it taught you how to rise. This is the end of the story I never thought I'd live through, and the beginning of the life I never thought I'd get to have. No longer a wife betrayed or a friend deceived or a woman broken. Just me whole, wiser, and finally free.